All right, Leonore, thanks for joining Mastercast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. I know you, but maybe our viewers don't. Do you mind just introducing yourself? Tell us where you work and kind of your role and how you got there.
So Bobby, my name is Leonore Lotz. I work for a company called RSA Web. We traditionally are an ISP, an internet services provider. We started in 2001 by our two founding members, who are Mark Slingsby and Rob Gilmore, and we sort of just evolved into a technology services provider to enterprise customers, mostly within South Africa, and in the traditional sense, sort of selling ADSL, email support, those kind of things. And then later on, we evolved into a public cloud provider. And about 5 years ago, RSA Web we deliberately, intentionally went into the consumer space. So as fiber became more readily available in South Africa, we actually sort of split our company. And we have a consumer division that really focuses on sort of rolling out fiber to consumers, to houses, or MDUs, multiple dwelling units, as well as fixed LTE. And then we've got the enterprise division that still very much focuses on our business to business and our also business to reseller division. So we, on the enterprise side, so I'm head of enterprise. I'm responsible for pretty much all of the departments that fall under the enterprise division. And so what that really means is we're very much an outside-in focused organization. So we really listen to what's happening in the industry, what's happening in the market, and what our customers are really asking us for. And so what we currently, in a nutshell, what we sell to our customers is connectivity, security, VoIP services, mobile services. So we've actually built a custom-built sort of platform whereby we're able to aggregate MTN and Vodacom data and sell SIM cards to our customers using this platform, and they can remotely manage data for their staff.
Okay.
And then we also have our own public cloud, RSA Web's own public cloud. We partner with AWS as well. And now more recently, we've rolled out an IoT and Internet of Things network. And they kind of, all of these products kind of work together to help our customers become more sort of digitally focused and become more comfortable with kind of navigating their digital roadmap. So everyone speaks quite a lot about like digital transformation.
Fourth industrial revolution.
And I think what most companies think about when they think about that is like e-commerce.
Yes.
And how are they going to start selling online? But what we always say is we're the plumbers. We provide the infrastructure. So we provide the cloud that enables them to sell online, and we help companies work remotely more efficiently, and now with IoT, with the Internet of Things, we help our customers gather more data to make more data-driven decisions, and help reduce wastage in whatever their business may be.
That's amazing. That's quite an introduction there. So that sets the tone for kind of the theme we wanted to talk to today, which was, I think, if I had to put it into a summary, it would be the landscape of the South African digital space, when we talk about internet and all of that. And one of the things that we initially spoke, or the themes that we spoke about or decided to talk about, was the brain drain that we are experiencing in South Africa. I think I've said it on the podcast before, is if you go onto anyone's website these days, you'll see that their career page is full of developers positions that are open. So I just want to give your take on your understanding of what's happening in the market or in the industry.
So not only are we seeing a lot of highly skilled individuals leaving the country, we're seeing a lot of tech executives leave the country. There was an article this week, actually, I think on my broadband, that spoke about some of the top tech execs who've actually left the country and they're now heading up these organizations in the UK and Australia. But we're actually, when we monitor a lot of our cancellations coming through from our fiber to the home department, we actually ask our customers why they're canceling, and so many of them, I think at one point got to about 30% of them, were canceling because they're immigrating.
That's insane.
So it's not only what we're seeing from we're struggling to find skills, or really skilled individuals are leaving the country. We're actually literally seeing our customers leave to immigrate, and we're really asking, because we genuinely obviously try and retain our customers, and if they're unhappy with our service, we ask, jeepers, if you're really unhappy, how can we turn this around? We want to retain you. So they don't have to lie to us. They don't have to lie about why they cancel.
Honesty is better than,
just, I'm canceling because I'm moving. I'm canceling because I'm unhappy.
Yes.
Like at one point it got to about 30 or 40% of cancellations were literally, they're not unhappy, they're not moving, they literally are leaving. They're selling, they're packing up, and they're leaving the country. So I think we're seeing very early stages of what probably is going to get a lot worse in terms of brain drain, unless we make more of a concerted effort as a country and an economy to really retain highly skilled individuals, because we really need them from an entrepreneurship perspective, as well as a huge amount of our economy depends on SMEs and entrepreneurs starting up ventures in order to retain these highly skilled individuals.
And that kind of leads me to the next topic that we wanted to touch on, was AWS bringing their headquarters to Cape Town. And it seems to me that if I read an article, it's only about the uproar about going to River Club. Do you want to kind of tell your insights into that whole situation?
Yeah, look, so a lot of questions have come our way, because RSA Web has had a public cloud since 2013, and so we were a little bit early in terms of first movers in the cloud space specifically, and so a lot of our customers, or I actually had an executive ask me the other day, but how are we going to remain relevant when AWS really launches, or sort of starts to lap up market share? And the point that we are still really harping on is AWS or Azure or Google Cloud coming into any country. It does two things. It makes the industry more aware and cognizant of their options. So where our customers 2 or 3 years ago weren't even cloud ready, they weren't even considering it, it was also on-prem, people were really concerned if you couldn't see it, like, where was it? If your server wasn't sitting there in your server room, then it's probably unsafe or insecure. But so it's made the industry, or like our customers, more aware of their options. So it's actually increased the conversations around the appetite for cloud readiness, or moving to the cloud, or having like a hybrid sort of cloud and on-prem solution. And the second thing that it really does is it makes organizations like RSA Web reassess our offering, right? So whenever you have a competitor who could potentially take market share, or it just makes us be better. And that's like anything with competition, it forces all the current players in the industry to improve. I can't remember, I was listening to I think I was listening to a podcast or something the other day, which was a Simon Sinek talk, I think, and he was saying when people are always concerned if Starbucks moves into a neighborhood, Starbucks is going to steal all the business from the mom and pop shop. But what it actually does is it brings more foot traffic into the street that supports the mom and pop shop. And if the mom and pop shop don't up their game, like, and he just used an example, like have almond milk, then yes, you're going to have people go to Starbucks because they cater to more variety. So yeah, it brings more understanding of what's happening in the cloud space, but it also means that players like us need to up our game. But I quite like the conversation happening around it. It's creating jobs. AWS creates jobs, creates investment into the country, specifically into the cities. What it will always do, it'll create controversy. You'll always have your guys going, no, traffic's going to be, horrible. Our staff are going to be poached. and all sorts of,
it freaks me out because we've got this crazy unemployment record, 40% unemployment in this country, and people are upset that AWS wants to come and bring their headquarters to Africa, in South Africa. Like,
and create like 7,000 jobs in that city. Like,
it's amazing. But I like it. What you're talking about from an RSA Web point of view is you're talking free market. It's what the free market does. Don't want to get political, but if the airline space was a free market, SAA wouldn't exist anymore, right? Well, now they've gone private, but it's what it's what the free market does. It makes you all up your game, but that's exciting. Also, talking about offline, you guys said that you're doing product RSA Web. That is, you guys are doing product solutions for enterprises as well. Do you just want to touch on some of that? Is that part of you upping your game?
So we've always really worked very closely with our enterprise clients, and we really listen to what they need. So very often we'll have, so I think 2019 was a year of stability. So 2019, we did very little product release. We focused on stability of infrastructure and cloud investment and those kind of things. And this year we're doing a lot more product release. So I think I was speaking to the mobile solution that we created. And so what that's specifically that solution focused really on consumption based. So as an organization, you can see how many SIM cards you have and how much data you've used at any point in the month. So like on the 23rd, you'll know that, my team's used whatever, 200 gigs of data and 25 SIM cards. But what we're actually converting that to now is a spend manager. But what we do is we actually, we have a very agile sort of focused methodology, and we work very closely with our customers. And so we'll just release a beta version to a few of them and take their feedback and do those incremental changes. And again, those kind of requests come from our customers. So this specific platform that we have developed was very much like on a SIM card by SIM card basis. And then recently we had a customer who is an IoT customer. So they've got SIM cards that they put into security devices, and they are ordering 5,000 SIM cards a month. So they actually needed a bulk feature. So then we went and we created a bulk feature. And then not only that, but they actually needed an API. So then on the 1st of June, we actually released an API. So now they're able to incorporate it into their billing systems or into other third-party reporting that they may require. So it's very much like an outside-in approach. So in terms of like, our product teams really listen to our customers, and we really focus on what the market is telling us. It doesn't help that we try and force things onto them. Although sometimes, we know that it would benefit them, like, take your co-location out of a data center and put that information into the cloud. Like, obviously that would be beneficial, but you can't force certain things onto clients. So we really do sort of take an outside-in approach.
Okay. And off the record, we were chatting about the state of IoT in South Africa, and it was so fascinating. I was like, let's save it for now. You were saying that are companies getting value out of it? Are they being able to monetize it, for example? Do you just want to kind of explain your understanding of the state of the IoT infrastructure and industry in South Africa?
So it's been one of those things that I think South Africa is a bit slow to take up. There's so much value, and you would have seen the guys from like Air Robotics who have those drones that fly over crops, and they can pinpoint where there's a disease on a tree, and then they isolate that tree so it doesn't affect other trees. And that technology is great. Unfortunately, the industries that are the first that you would consider the first to take up that kind of IoT technology are the industries that are quite slow to move on technology. So like agriculture, for example. So, farmers don't necessarily want to spend money on soil probes or moisture probes or those kind of things. But it's really a space where you can add a lot of value. And I think the one example I was talking to you about was, so the fact about IoT is it kind of it kind of gets broken down into three parts. You've got the actual physical devices. So you've got your temperature probes or your GPS trackers or your door monitors or those kind of things. So the actual physical little devices. And then you've got the network. So those devices need to connect to a gateway that obviously gathers that data. And then you've got the analytics and the dashboard, the reporting. And the reporting is really where it becomes valuable. So you'll say, for example, I've got 20 fridges and they can't drop below, 4 degrees, or they can't go above 7 degrees. So you set those parameters. And so you don't really care when they're between 4 and 7 degrees. You care about when it drops below that or above it. So it's like exception reporting. And so RSA Web is providing solutions in all three of those sort of spaces. So the devices and the network and the dashboard. But you obviously you've got your industries that have the devices, but they don't really necessarily know what to do with the data. So they're collecting all this data, but they're not really using this data for valuable, like actionable metrics. So like, I've got a soil probe, but what does that mean? So what we're also trying to do is so you're asking about the value, like are customers actually getting value out of it? So what's really important is you talk about, well, if you don't implement this, like what is your stock loss? So, so we were talking about a truck, for example. So a truck, and the cold chain of that truck is quite important, and it's going from point A to point B. But if the truck stops at any point on that journey, and the door is open, so you've got a GPS tracker, and you've got a door sensor, and then you've got a temperature monitors in the truck, and the truck is transporting, I don't know, berries or whatever,
milk,
exactly. And if that truck is not supposed to stop between point A and B, but the truck does stop and the doors have opened, and you can actually see this because you've got sensors, you've lost, and something goes off, you've lost 20 or 30,000 Rand worth of stock because someone somewhere along the line stopped the truck, opened a door for whatever reason, and you've lost the cold chains. You can't deliver it to your customer anymore. Your compliance is shot. So the great thing about IoT is it's quite a simple way to ensure compliance in terms of like cold chains or water metering or manhole monitoring. So that's another thing that we've looked.
That's the thing about IoT is that you can there's so many things that you can build and plug into temperatures, room temperature, like
electricity,
all sorts of stuff, right? Your geyser. So there's so many things, but it's like, how do you like you said, how do we take that data and turn it into reporting to solve some sort of a problem? And that's it. So and then selling that problem, say, well, if you implement this is the problem you're solving. And I guess that's where we're lacking, is taking all the data and turning it into something that they can
because it seems like a little bit of a grudge purchase, right? Like why am I going to go and spend 3,000-4,000 Rand a month on these little devices that I may or may not need? But at the end of the day, 3,000 or 4,000 Rand a month, when you're going to lose 20,000 Rand worth of stock in potentially one trip, it becomes that return on investment conversation becomes quite easy when people understand like where are our risks. So you look at things like occupancy on desks. So we've been speaking to a few customers who with sort of work from home hybrids, they're really wondering like, what is our desk occupancy? And so and I know it sounds like a strange conversation to have, but do we actually need to keep all this office space, or can we get an office half of the size?
I see.
You can, based on, so we go and we put, you put desk occupancy probes down, you'll monitor it for a month or two, and you say, hey, listen, your desks are being occupied 25-30% of the time, and they go, oh, hectic. We'll take, we'll downscale, we save 50% on rent. Cool, Bobs, you know what I mean? So there's so many solutions, but you don't necessarily, some of them are proactive, and some of them are just very like obviously necessary, like your GPS tracking. or temperature sensing. We've been speaking to customers who, for example, leave the aircon on in their whole building because they don't have a way of switching it off, like in certain rooms. So the cool thing about IoT is you actually have something called a downlink message. So you can literally go, if you can set your sensors, if there's no one in the room, because you've got a room sensor, switch the aircon off. Like, because you send a little downlink message, so you go, you literally, you can say to you can program your sensors to say, and they talk to each other. If the room is not occupied, switch the lights off and switch the aircon off. And in that, you obviously save, you can save whatever X amount per month on electricity. So that, you're right, there's so many use cases. They're very simple devices. Some of the devices do very interesting things, like they've got accelerometers on them.
Yes.
For ATM monitoring. So ATMs, they actually pick them up. The things that we've learned lately, they pick up ATMs, and so you need to assess the accelerometer, the center of gravity, all sorts of things, and then you're able to. You can. But yeah, and you were talking earlier about GSM, the actual network that gets used. And there are other options nowadays. You don't have to use a GSM network. You can use other networks that are not jammable. They're more cost efficient. And the batteries on these little devices last longer. So there are all sorts of things that are really cool that are happening in the IoT space. But what we've seen with some of the players in the market is they've struggled to monetize. And the appetite just isn't quite there all the time.
Selling the value proposition.
Yeah. But so you really, so in a nutshell, you really can get value out of it. It's just, we just need to make sure that I think as South African organizations, we kind of deal with risk and stock loss. Like you were talking about stock value, that sort of buffer earlier. Like we talk about those things as if it's just an everyday kind of like an operational cost that we just need to work into our, our income statement at the end of the day, and we just write it off. But we don't have to. There's so many other ways that we can reduce that risk. And that's really what we're trying to do, is speak to our enterprise clients to find out where exactly their problems are and how we can identify like simple ways of solving those problems. You
talk about these IoT solutions. There's so much room for entrepreneurs to actually figure out, but hold on, I didn't know a device could do this, and I can start I could start something if they just understood how and where to go to do that. And that's one of the,
because how many of these things are being imported. Actually, everything is imported.
Exactly.
Nothing is manufactured locally. So everything is imported. And so I was actually telling you about the manhole monitors. It's a huge problem having those manholes opened, unsolicited opening. Yes. And so what you do is they obviously have maintenance happening in a certain area. They don't, if those manholes get opened, those don't get alerted, but they get alerts for manholes that get opened otherwise, and I mean, you can imagine how much of a headache that those few alerts can it's
open that manhole and there is millions of rands of infrastructure sitting underneath there.
A lot of companies, like there's copper, there's fiber, there's water, there's electricity.
It's sitting underneath
it's pretty scary. So a manhole monitor becomes a really valuable thing. But there's so many other things like electricity. So an electricity probe that can actually go onto your electricity box.
Yes.
So if you look at your electricity box, there's a little light that flashes. So that thing is actually metering your electricity.
Okay.
But there've been so many instances where people have actually put an IoT probe onto that electricity box where it's actually, the readings have been off by like 20 or 30%.
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
Over a few months.
Hectic.
So there's a lot of this kind of thing, like water metering, electricity, like those kind of things. It's like who's marking your homework? You can't mark your own homework. So that's like when it comes to putting a secondary measure in place. You've got your fridge thermometer, but who says the thermometer's not broken? You need a second probe. You know what I'm saying? Like
that's so interesting.
That's why IoT becomes also a cool like validator.
Yes. That is, I'm now going to question every device in my house. I also wonder, like, if you think about overseas, like in America, let's say, these IoT solutions, are they actually in place? Are we just behind because we can't figure it out?
You know, I think they are. IoT, especially, so they'll call it like property tech. Where they have like smart homes or smart buildings. And we actually were speaking to chicken farmers the other day who now have to build their coops to be smart coops, but you can actually retrofit buildings to become smart coops. So I know it sounds so funny, but like chickens like die in certain temperatures. So they actually have to monitor the temperature in the coops. But now listen to this. So the coops are typically in very remote areas, right? So there's a temperature monitor. So let's say it goes to 38 degrees. And this is that's like a very deadly temp. They literally have to phone the farm manager. Hey, Kwesi, the chickens are going to frick. Kwesi has to hop in his bakkie. He has to drive out like 20, 30 minutes to chicken coop and put that aircon on to cool it down.
Oh, wow.
But now imagine you've got a little
That's
IoT.
so easy to solve. It's like 2021. From your iPad.
There's a little Kwesi lies in his bed with his like vintage lager, and he like sets like.
So I'll tell you a story about my folks who've up until recently being Portuguese, a fish and chip shop, right? And so the monitoring of the freezers with the fish is one of the biggest things. Like they can't go on holiday because they have to monitor the freezers where the fish are sitting over weekends or whatever it is, right?
No.
But now they're in their 60s. You try and tell them about an IoT device. It's like this. I'm like, there is a better way to do this, but they're just so old school that they don't even want to, like flirt with the idea because they just don't get it. And it's like hectic, man. Come on. You can make your life so much easier. So I guess that's the key in IoT is how do we sell that understanding to people? Like these farmers, they probably don't understand how tech can solve how many of their problems. So that's the key.
So again, we're very fortunate to be working with some of these chicken farmers. And they'll literally say, oh, but we're busy building all of our new coops to be smart coops. And we're like, but why don't you just retrofit your coops, your current coops with a few devices, like literally will do the same thing. It might not look as pretty or whatever, but it's going to do the same thing. You're not going to lose your chickens.
It's tested before it's the same thing as software building, right? let's
so that's what we do. We do a lot of POCs with
that's it. So like where the word MVP actually gets put into practice.
Exactly.
But it doesn't always have to be a software project. You can actually go and do it in these situations, test if they realize that it works or not before they go and spend millions of rands building a new coop.
No, exactly. And also it's like now your farm manager's not, so it's like it's employee efficiency, is your employees' skills best used going to physically walk out to a soil probe, to soil like 50 kilometers that way, manually put the probe and check the moisture, or is your employees' efficiency best used researching whatever crop cycle? I don't even know what these people do, but you know what I'm saying? Like there's a better way to spend the intelligence that's being applied. So have a soil probe every 1 kilometer and then check the moisture and then decide, okay, actually we need that soil that in that block is worse than in that block, and then rather tend to that, you know what I mean? So I think 100%. It just comes down to efficiency and then using your staff skills in a way that actually is more beneficial to your business as opposed to monitoring stupid stuff like the temperature and chicken dip.
You asked me earlier what motivates me for the podcast is these lessons that we learn in the tech space can be implemented everywhere. And that's it. So like I'll hear about the travel industry again, and you hear about something they're doing there, and you can use the same principles that we are using in our product spaces, in our agile, like you use the same concepts and you can use it in how many different fields, different industries, different jobs you didn't even realize, but the principles are always the same. And that's what the message I'm trying to get out there is to understand that you can use these mechanisms. It doesn't mean because I work in software development that you can't listen to what I'm talking about. You can take these principles anywhere and everywhere, and there's probably there's a problem that's there to be solved, and you can use technology and these principles to solve them. And if we can just get that message out. At the end of the day,
like we always say, we're trying to do three things, or like the only reason you do anything in business is for three reasons: to increase revenue, to decrease costs, or to manage risk. And whatever you're doing, those are the three things that you are trying to achieve. And so I think, like when it comes to a lot of the technology that you guys are doing, you're probably helping somebody drive revenue or reduce cost. And when it comes to IoT, it's about, you can actually drive down costs by reducing wastage, but you also can help manage a lot of the risk as well.
Yeah, reduce wastage. I love that.
Yeah, we've got a lot of wastage here. If you had to speak to, I mean, your folks, but if you had to speak to like a ShopRite or a Checkers, how much produce goes off?
Yeah, now that's big scale, hey? That's huge. No, it's scary.
And I come from my previous life before RSA Web. I was in food services, so like food production plants, bakeries, those very, very glamorous, abattoirs, those kind of things.
Oh, lovely.
And I know. But from a compliance perspective, like these guys are still quite old school. You'll still see them walking around with their clipboards, like with a log. Right? It's like, I mean, like your intelligence is applied in so many other like better areas than walking around checking thermometers for 8 hours a day.
Exactly. So that's the challenge that we have in our industry, is changing behaviors, changing a mindset and realizing that we can help your behaviors by using new solutions, whether they're tech-based or. And that's why I like Agile so much, because it teaches us how to retro all the time and kind of always revisit, what are we doing? How are we doing it? How can we get better at what we're doing? And just constantly doing that. I mean, who wants to walk around with a board and a piece of paper and a pen? No, it's not the 80s.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I think so. Just to like come back, you said, do you think it's happening in America?
Yes.
I think they have less of a tech fear. They're less tech phobic than a country like South Africa is. 100%. So you're talking about behavior and mindset. I think people here think technology equals cost. They don't understand that like technology might equal cost, but then it equals savings.
Yes, exactly.
There's like, that's not the end of the formula.
And that's the thing, we need to figure out how to sell that better, I guess.
Yeah,
your value is coming. So, it's going to be upfront cost, but your savings later.
So we actually speak quite a lot about spend to save. So you spend now and you say, like, you save. Yes. Spend on your tech now, but you save on, wastage and risks and those kind of things.
We've touched on a number of different elements here. Just from to finish off. How would you kind of describe you're so like on the ground, being part of RSA Web. How would you describe the general feel of the South African tech industry?
But there really is a requirement for work from home. That sort of, how do we, or not even work from home, work from anywhere, so how do we enable our staff to work from anywhere securely, that doesn't cost too much? To do these kind of things like Zoom calls that the connectivity is stable and doesn't, and it just continues to.
You touched on security there, and I think that's a subject all on its own, because I mean, are people really exposed now working anywhere, like you said, working for a sensitive company, and security? I mean, that must be quite a challenge.
Well, what do you guys do for your devs when the devs work from home, or are you just letting them access servers over the internet?
Yes.
Well, I mean, that's possible.
I'm not
100%
sure of their security measures that they have in place, to be honest. But yeah, I think that is something I haven't really dabbled in to understand.
Yeah. I mean, not only that, right? But you're also thinking, so there's obviously business security, right? So like who's accessing servers? Is it happening over the internet, or is it happening over VPN? What, how are organizations, because essentially what you want is you want an office setup extended to someone's home.
Yes.
So you kind of want like a firewall, you want that security, that authentication just extended to someone's home, and you just hope that their laptop is secure and that they've not, opened some dodgy email.
Yeah, geez, I don't know how that is being tracked right now, to be honest. I think everyone that could be listening and watching is going to go and ask some interesting questions at work tomorrow.
Yeah. No, so what we, just to answer your question, what we really are seeing is flexibility is required, but there's still an eagerness to explore options in terms of security, safety, scalability, reporting, especially where code is being deployed. Sort of containerization and Kubernetes is becoming a talking point. And I mean, so we're having these conversations with our clients, especially our large enterprise clients are always keen, because they've got the spend, they've got a little bit of money to play around with, and they typically have a sysadmin or an IT department or a dev team who is a little bit more ahead of what they're requiring to deploy, and so that's cool. So it's cool to deal with those kind of companies. But then you also have your guys who are simply working from home, and they just require that flexibility and the support from a local partner. And so and we understand that, so. So we're lucky. We're pretty lucky to have to be involved, or in a country where people are forward thinking and always quite keen to explore new technology. Yeah,
no, it's been it's been quite interesting hearing from an enterprise point of view, because I dabble mostly in startup and the innovation kind of space, but it's nice to see what's also happening up at the top, because that also needs to filter through, right? And create that ecosystem we were talking about earlier. But anyways, Leonore, it's been a great conversation. I think a lot of insights into what's going on in the whole digital space. So thank you for joining. Yes. It's been great chatting to you.
Thanks, Bobby.